I think it's very important for any new patients who's coming on understanding this journey, and especially when they got multiple challenges happening at the same time. Take a pause, take a breath, go in the path that's going to help you to create the best normal that you can, in spite of the challenges you might be facing.
Hello, I'm LaVarn Burton.
I'm Tamara Ruggiero.
And I'm Mike Spigler.
Welcome to Season 2 of the American Kidney Fund's podcast, The Kidney Collective, which gives an intimate voice to the many facets of living with kidney disease.
Our theme for this season is Rare Voices, Relatable Stories.
Over the next few months, we'll be talking about rare kidney diseases and explore the shared experiences that connect the entire kidney community.
Join us for these candid conversations that offer both information and inspiration.
Today, we are joined by Della Major, an AKF Ambassador and kidney health coach. Della's kidney disease journey began in November 2011 when she was diagnosed with kidney failure due to lupus nephritis. She was on dialysis until she received a transplant in 2019. During that time, she became an outspoken patient advocate, sharing her story and educating the public on kidney disease as much as she can. Della, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for being here, Della. So before we recorded today, I took a look at your LinkedIn, and I was really struck by the fact that you have spent your whole career, I think, helping people learn and grow and become more capable first as an IT trainer for many years, as a high school math teacher, and then as a health and life coach. And I was just wondering, where do you think that instinct to guide and encourage other people comes from in you?
During my time as a IT professional, I happened to attend a parent-teacher conference at a high school for my sister, and I was taken aback at what I saw as relates to grading and the lack of students and what they were doing and how they was achieving. And it took me back to when I was in high school, and I had a high school counselor who really encouraged me and said that in spite of all of my behavior patterns, that I was a little rebel in the rough. But he said, in spite of all that, you was a natural born leader. And it's going to come to the point where it's a crossroad. And at that crossroad, you got to make a decision as to which way you're going to go. It brought back, during that parent-teacher conference, it brought that back to me. And I kept saying, where are the mentors? Where are those individuals who's going to pour back, who's going to help that generation that oftentimes people would cast away because they think that they are unable to learn. And I just felt it was like a ministry. I felt a strong pull to really pour back into the system and teach those at-risk students. And so I left corporate professional and went into education, and I never looked back because I always believed that, learning is just not filling of a pail, but it's a lighting of a fire. And that's my motto that I have with WBEats. And I believe that if you give the same resources and you give information and knowledge to help the person to learn, then you can imagine what kind of change that they can have. And so in relation to the kidney, my focus point has always been a well-informed patient is a healthy patient. And so I felt that it was a lot of disparity, and I felt that it was an opportunity for me to make sure that anyone else who's going down this journey, that there's somebody they can connect to, and I can pour back that inspiration and let them know, kidney disease might be a diagnosis, but it doesn't dictate the outcome. It was a lot of information I just didn't know. So after I got over the shock, after I got over the despair of receiving the diagnosis of dialysis and everything like that, I just decided that I was going to dictate my outcome. And that outcome is going to include me sharing whatever I learned with others. And so that passion has never dimmed. So it stems from that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you are helping so many other people now do just that, right? So take us back to when you learned that you were in kidney failure. What happened?
OMG, what a crash that was. I was a after school director, and we was doing our summer program, and I was in my classroom instructing some students on a particular object lesson that I was instructing. And next thing you know, I passed out, literally passed out in the classroom. And so you can imagine you got 30 students looking at their teacher pass out on the floor. And as I was recovering, I kept thinking, oh, that's because I was just doing too much. I'm always on a go. And maybe, everything, I just tired myself out. And it just happened the next day, I barely was able to get out of the bed. And so I had a friend who also was an educator. She was able to rush me to the hospital. And from the moment from my house to the actual emergency room to the clinic, everything, my systems were shutting down. And unbeknownst to me, while I was in it's a ward like, and it's the red zone. The red zone means somebody is serious. I'm listening to the doctors tell my daughters what was happening. It was not to the next day that I had this doctor come in and start talking about lupus nephritis and all of this. And I had to stop him because at that time I'm already overwhelmed with tubes and everything coming on all on my body. And I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. And I said, you got to talk to me like I'm a 2-year-old. Make it plain. And he said, you have lupus and lupus is attacking your kidney, but we need to do a biopsy to find out and to confirm. And so that was in literally 2007. And that's when I found out I had lupus. And that's when I found out that I was already at stage 4 renal disease. And so he was trying to break it down to me as to the various stages. All I heard at that time was in, and all I heard was die in dialysis. Only thing I heard, I'm dying. End stage renal disease. All I heard was it's the end. So I was trying to get my life together, get my family and everything like that. But it was like 7 months later from the time that I first received diagnosis when I went through the orientation and then immediately starting dialysis.
It's such a human condition to kind of discount things that you're feeling. I'm even passing out and thinking, oh, I'm just doing too much, right? None of us wants to believe that anything is really happening to us. Looking back, even before that, are there symptoms you're like, you know what? Oh, that probably was because of this or that thing's happening. Did you have any symptoms before that?
Exactly. You know what? It's so important, Mike, that it's so important me share that because other people was noticing my outer appearance was changing. The T-zones, the ashen face. I was looking very like pale skin. And with lupus, you got discord, you got the T-zone rashes and everything, the rashing in my head, my joints. Besides, all of these things were happening. Then my sleep was very lethargic. I was always tired, physically tired. And then I started having like these little pains in my lower left and right sides. And I didn't understand that. I just chalked it up to, oh, I'm not drinking something, or maybe I drink too much water, or I had too much pop, or whatever.
Mhm.
Not in a million years would I think about, first of all, kidney failure. Not in a million years would I think about I'm
Yeah.
not drinking enough fluids. Not in a million years. These are symptoms that was happening until I crashed and started learning a little bit through the doctors, including myself and my research. Then I'm like, I did have that. Oh man, that's what was happening. I started picking out like all these signals was happening. Your body is going to tell you now. It was already doing that, but it took me to crash. It took me to go through all of that for me to understand things was happening, and I just ignored it, like you said. And I'm telling you, for any other patient or potential people who may be just coming into this, the unknown, it might be scary, but you know your body better than anything. And if you're doing things that contrary to what you used to do, that's those aha moments that you need to start paying attention to. And that was something that I ignored. But now, this is what I share during my webinars, any kidney screenings that I participate in or host myself.
So you were having to, I mean, I can only imagine how challenging it was because you had to sort of integrate knowledge of kidney failure and lupus at the same time.
At the same
And probably, I imagine you probably did not know a huge amount about either condition.
No, I did not know anything about that. It took my nephrologist at the time at the county hospital. That's where I started this journey. He was very personable with his patients and helping us to really get a good understanding. So I consider myself blessed to have had the head of the nephrology department to be my, spirit doctor to help me. And then at the same time, he understood the importance of me to know what was going on because I was very involved. I've always been involved in my journey since day one. So, and as an educator, you're going to do your own research. And so when I started doing my own research, I had to do it in twofold. First, I had to understand the why behind this. What is lupus? How does lupus start impacting my kidneys? What was really going on? What was this scarring? How my joints was feeling? And then the second phase happened when I started doing dialysis and understanding the whole process of that and what was going on. Why was it important for me to be going through this and having my blood taken in and taken out? Unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize that if I were to continue on neglecting and, really going against the treatment, because I didn't want to start dialysis right away because at the same time, it was impacting every area of my life. I wanted to go to work. I wanted to do the same thing. But I realized when I couldn't breathe one night, and I was afraid because I was afraid to go to sleep, thinking that I was not going to wake up because of my lack of breath. Then I started understanding the impact of not doing your dialysis treatment, the impact of not even doing dialysis alone. I'm speeding up. If I didn't want to die, I'm sure enough speeding it up by not doing the treatment. That's when I start planning, how do I fight on this good front? How do I live with lupus, but yet still create a life that I'm not ashamed of while doing dialysis? And so instead of me being negative against it, I start trying to figure out, how do I create my new normal? And I think it's very important for any new patients who's coming on understanding this journey, and especially when they got multiple challenges happening at the same time, take a pause, take a breath, so that you can articulate and you can really go in the path that's going to help you to create the best normal that you can, in spite of the challenges you might be facing.
It sounds like you had to go through almost like a step-by-step process that
Literally, it
to
was.
to let go of the vision that you had for your life and what you thought your life was, and step into this new life, that was completely different, and, you certainly weren't expecting it, and even the decision to start dialysis, sounds to me like it took a little while to accept that you had to do it and why you had to do it, and I think that's very common for people.
Yes, it did, because look, I had 3 losses. First, it was my health. Second, was my marriage. All this happened all at the same time. And then
Mm,
2 years later, it was my mom. All of
wow.
this happened. And those losses didn't leave me enough time to grieve. And the grief behind everything was really, really heavy. It impacted me in such a way that I couldn't even imagine. Once I officially said I was gonna go into dialysis and started my treatment, the very first day on the dialysis treatment, that's when I broke down. I realized my life was not gonna be the same that I chose, and I'm looking down with a catheter tube coming out of my chest, and I'm 42 years old. I'm trying to figure out, personal relationship, who's gonna wanna deal with this, and I felt that this journey was the people that would have been my support, they already gone, and it was just overwhelming. And, dealing with that grief, really impacted me as to whether or not I wanted to even continue. But I must say, it was a patient 2 seats down. She was a much older patient, and I was listening to her cry out loud at her dialysis chair saying, "God, just take my life. I don't wanna do this anymore." And it was just something about her words that took me into a fight mode, not a flight mode. And I literally turned to her and I said, "Mama, we're going to do this together. We're not going to let this take us out." And the moment I said that, it took it off me and put it on somebody else. And so now I had purpose. I felt the purpose came in, because now here it is, somebody who can identify with me, much older patient, but yet still we're going through this. And so that grief turned into a fight mode, and that fight mode turned into empowerment. And so that started my journey of advocacy. That started my journey of helping people to understand we don't allow our situation to dictate our outcome. And so I really contribute this everything that I do now and going to continue to do for probably the remainder of my life to her, because it took her and those words to put that, okay, no, you ain't going to be victorious on it. Of course, my faith, but you're not going to take over for me. And that's when I started this journey of advocacy. I wanted people to really understand what was happening, understand the jargon in a most simplest way, because sometimes medical professions talk medical, but at the same time, when you're talking to a human, you got to break it down like that 2-year-old. So I was taking what I understood medically speaking and articulate in a simple way so I can get those aha moments with other patients like myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you really take someone that's going through something similar to really be able to connect.
Yeah.
And because it's so hard sometimes when you're going through a major health event or grief or whatever it is, the loss of someone close to you, if you don't really haven't experienced it, there's just a kind of a wall, I think, that goes up when someone else is trying to talk to you. I mean, what are some of the common misconceptions or questions that you encounter when you're educating other patients?
Because it's such a lack of understanding of the various dialysis treatments. When they look at the machines and when they understanding the whole process, one of the things is they come in with this negative mindset. They come in like, I'm just going to die. Why I even have to deal with that? They don't see any hope. And some of the jargons that is being provided, like in orientation, giving a patient who never gone through this and saying PD or HHD and all of that. And it's like, they sitting here so overwhelmed, they just thinking, why do I even need to go through that? I might as well just be done. And then they're thinking they can't travel, they can't do anything else. They stuck in the house. Nobody else is their whole outlook of life is done. So it's like automatically, I'm gonna die, so why should I even be bothered? So that's where non-compliance come into play. And then because you are looking at everything and you seeing on one group of culture, it seems like everything is going great because when they talk about transplant, they like, oh, they make it sound like that's a cure. And I'm over here, I don't have people that's ready to want to get tested as a transplant. And they thinking, you can't even get that. But the whole thing I have to do is transplant is a treatment. And you got to treat it as a treatment if you're able to do that. And so it was a lot of these myths about, what your body go through, a lot of the jargon, a lot of the conversations about just dialysis as a whole and the negative connotation behind it. So I had to let somebody know. And I thank God for a friend of mine. His name is Jim. I can't think of his last name, but he used to do this campaign, DML, dialysis means life. And so when we went through that campaign with him, it made it sense because if it's the truth behind it, dialysis is giving you opportunity to live. And so I had to start spinning it to make it seem like don't treat this as if something bad. Your life ain't over. This is a process. And you got to go through the process till you get the sense of freedom. So a few things that comes along the line from transplantation, dialysis, and medications, all of these types of things. So many myths and so many things that was happening. Yeah.
Do you want to walk us through? So you were able to get a transplant in 2019. Can you talk about that journey? Was it a living donor? Was it a deceased donor? What did you learn that you didn't know about transplant during that process?
My first kidney transplant, one of the things that they shared with me is the expectancy, the life expectancy span of that kidney. And so they said that it was a high risk, but they anticipated and gave it a life expectancy of 5 years. And they asked me the question as to whether or not did I still want it. And I was like, of course. And one of the things I shared with them is like any dialysis patient will want, even if it was just 1 year, will be willing enough to take a high risk transplant. But I really didn't understand at that time a little bit about when they say it was a high risk kidney. Because even though I took the high risk kidney, I had other complications that was arising because of that. UTIs, consistent UTIs, CMV, some other like viruses that was easily susceptible that came into my body that I had to do that. And it was actually attacking the kidney. But yet still, I did my process, did my training, did what I had to do, my treatments, to maintain it. It lasted for other 5 years, but of that 4 years, it was an overwhelming sense of joy, even in spite of all the stuff that I was going through, because I was no longer going into the center 3 days a week, 4.5 hours a chair, two 15-gauge needles in my arm, drawing my blood in, drawing my blood out. So the idea the mindset behind that was the fact that I was free. And that was the joy that I had. Free from a chair, free to try to live my life, free to travel, free that. So when I got that first kidney transplant, when I first got that call, and that was some of the things they shared, I still took it. But it was really still another journey for me because the emotions that comes behind this. In dialysis, we were strict. You couldn't have this, you couldn't have that, you couldn't eat this, you couldn't eat that. So even though I had like these overwhelming sense of freedom, but yet still I had to treat it as not as a cure, because that's where my headspace was. Oh, I got it. I'm good. Now I'm good to go. I can live my life like it's golden. But no, when I start having these issues, it was a treatment, and now it put me back into what am I eating? What am I drinking? What am I the same stuff that I would do in dialysis. That's something that they really don't really emphasize, that transplantation is really still a treatment, and you gotta do your part. You gotta make sure you're taking your transplant medicines. You gotta make sure that you're doing and communicating with your transplant team anything and everything that is important. You need to really take the log. So it was a lot of behavior patterns that I had to readjust and rechange. Eating patterns I had to readjust and rechange. But one of the things that they didn't tell me was the emotional side behind that can come, because when the kidney transplant failed, I had already dealt with grief at the loss of my kidney, but this brought about a grief that natural words can't even explain, because the small incision that they had, they used to insert the transplanted kidney, the first one, they had a large incision to take it out because it wound up becoming aseptic. And that grief, that sense of loss left a emptiness out of me like never before. And then now I had a transplant, and now I got to do this journey of going back into dialysis. So it's a lot of things up front that I really wish that they would have gave me. And I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. Tell me what would happen. The good side is, hey, I've had this kidney for X amount of years. The bad would be, hey, you might go through some challenges, you might have this, but we're gonna work with you through infusions or whatever it might do, whatever rounds we gotta do to help you maintain it. But the ugly would be if it goes into full rejection and if it goes into acute rejection. And I think that's important to let the client or the patient know upfront with everything, so when this happens, it won't be like me, so shocked and the overwhelming grief and that I experienced. And so even though transplantation was great, I was no longer in dialysis chair, but I wasn't ready for the emotional side. I wasn't ready for the cost of the transplant medicines if, Medicare or whatever your primary insurance does not pay for it. And if you are a small family with me where I don't have a lot of, family or support system, or limited support, that's very, very difficult and that's very challenging. So in the orientation, they really don't talk about that. But that's something I really think that they need to, including the emotional side of waiting on a wait list for 3 to 4 years to get a transplant and then be told you off the wait list because of some hiccup in a testing. Now that makes you feel like, oh my God, I got to start back all over again. They don't talk about that.
Yeah, what an experience you have been through, and now you're on your second transplant. I wanted to ask a little bit about lupus. How does having lupus affect how you manage your transplant and keep your kidney healthy?
Well, because of the fact that I know that lupus was the original cause, I'm meticulous with it, because if I begin to know that I'm having a flare, because I had to start identifying when the lupus might be flaring up, which can obviously attack the kidney, or my joints issues is really, really so severe. I'm the first one to my rheumatologist and say, hey, this is my symptoms. What do you think I should do or what? But that's me training myself to identify these flares so I can do what I got to do on my part to make sure it doesn't hit or damage the new kidney. In my particular case, the medicines, some of the medications that we take for anti-rejection medicines that we take for the kidney to prevent rejection, I was already taking to stop the lupus from flaring. So after 10 years of taking this medication, you can imagine my body has already become a little sensitized and adapted to that medicine that we do for the rejection, right? And so that was one of the things that I had to have a serious conversation with the transplant doctors and my coordinator, whoever was involved, but they felt that the anti-rejection medicine will keep the lupus at bay. Now I've had a couple little hiccups, but as me staying in touch with my rheumatologist and, staying on top of things, being compliant and really involved in my overall care, that's what's helping us to keep the lupus where it's at and making sure that the kidney is being protected and not being harmed by it.
It sounds like you have to be on top of your health every single day.
For me, yes. And one of the things that I do share when I do my kidney health coaches and my webinars is I tell them a well-informed patient is a healthy patient. So that means you just can't not ask a question. You can't tell your team what's happening to you. You got a closed mouth don't get fed. So you got to let them know if something is changing and something is happening. You just can't just let it happen. No, tell them. Get on the phone. Call that after hours doctor or nurse or whomever it might be on call. Let them know this is happening because, early detection saves lives. So early detection would save my kidney. So that's how the way I look at it.
Well, Della, you mentioned Kidney Health Coach, and I was actually talking to my team that runs that program that I was doing this interview with you, and they mentioned that you're one of the super users of that program. So I want to first thank you for the work you do there. If you're not familiar with the AKF program on Kidney Health Coach, it is a free training that you can take to learn how to educate others in your community, friends, family members, your place of worship about kidney disease. And we have lots of other information we provide, including some information on lupus nephritis as well. You know, I'm sure obviously the community that you're educating is getting a lot out of it, but what are you getting out of it, Della, in doing that?
You know what? Because I am an empowerment coach, and it's for me, I'm looking to make sure that everybody is inspired and empowered to be able to live their life victorious and empowered. That's the name of one of my actual business called Reclaiming Live, and reclaiming, taking back their life, taking back their joy, but then living their life victorious and empowered, not allowing their diagnosis or whatever the situation dictate the outcome. And so when I do my quarterly kidney screenings with the National Kidney Foundation and they come out to the church, we go to different other locations and everything like that. My joy is to see that we're making impact. We're people who's coming in and they're realizing, oh my God, that was happening. I did feel this. And I didn't understand that at first. To see that aha moment, that's my joy. I'm not looking for no pats on the back. I'm not looking for no, people to say, hey, she's the great. No, I want them to be informed. And especially in the African American and Hispanic community where the disparity is very, very low and the lack of understanding and knowledge is low. And when I see that and when I doing these kidney screening, I feel the love, I feel the joy. I enjoy at the end people coming back and saying, hey, I've watched you, I've seen you. Man, you very passionate about this. Man, if I would have known this information ahead of time, I would have made the best decision. And the fact that I'm part of AKF, fact I do some other advocacy for other renal organizations, I'm able to feel that I can share that knowledge with them to help them to be able to seek out whatever resource that they need to help them during this kidney journey. So being an AKF kidney coach, one, you guys gave me the tools. Two, you allow me to be able to articulate effectively what I'm sharing, even though I don't have a medical license, but because I've done this for so long and I'm so engaged, being, informed, I feel confident as a coach, as a teacher, that the information that I'm sharing is not just some fly by night, but it's impactful and it's making impact within the community because now people are more aware of, man, I'm no longer going to play with, if I'm not producing urine, if I'm not, doing what I normally do. Now they're coming to me. I have a friend. I have somebody that I know they're going through this and this is what's happening and they're not understanding. Can you talk with them? And so that's opening the door for advocacy in multiple ways than I can even imagine. We can no longer allow this just to be silent and people suffering in silence. No, we need to be a squawker and give the tools for that. So for me, those aha moments as a coach, as a teacher, that's the teacher in me. Literally, I've had people to come back and say, you told me about this, a couple years ago, and now this is what's happening. And that makes me feel good because that's like, man, I made an impact. I made a change. I'm affectionately known as the game changer, and I'm here to change the game. That's what I'm here, my motto. And so that's what I do. I'm here to change the game. I'm not here just to just spew out. No, I want to see your life change. I want you to have that joy for on longevity. So that's what I get out of it for me.
Well, again, thank you so much for working on that and doing that. We really, really appreciate the work you're doing. It's so important.
Della, I imagine there are people listening to this who also who are inspired by your story and who are thinking about their own situation and how the power of sharing their story with other people, being a squawker, like you say, right? I mean, you've done everything. You've done videos for AKF. You've gone up on the Hill and met with legislators, your kidney health coach work, and all the work you do in the community. What advice would you give to someone who wants to start getting involved in that way, sharing their story more broadly with the community or with lawmakers or whoever it may be?
Well, the first thing I'm going to share is you start internally. And the first thing you start advocacy is always at home. So don't be afraid to really sit down and be honest. Have an open, honest conversation with your loved ones. Help them to be able to understand what you're really going through. This is going to help you to be able to formulate within yourself where you want to go with this. How much of a advocacy, how much of an impact you really want to make for yourself. Is it about you just sharing your story? Is it about you really, like we say, going on the Capitol Hill to bring about change within the system, of the renal, making sure that other individuals can get the resources and the tools that they need to be able to live the best life that they can? Is it only about you maybe being a support person to go out and help organizations like AKF when we go to some of our market days and everything like that outside of the four walls or anything? So it starts there because you having an idea as to how far you want to go is going to help you to be able to make the best decision when you decide that you might want to participate with an organization like AKF. And so for me, I wanted this information to go far and beyond just myself and just beyond my community. And I wanted to be a part of legislation and helping to bring about change within the reading community. So that was the first thing for me. I had to sit down and make that decision. And I was talking to my family about that, and I was just telling them, especially when I got my first opportunity to be advocate for you on Advocacy Day on the Hill, I was so excited because it's like now I could be able to share my story. I could be able to articulate what's happening with me within my community, within my area of influence, and as an educator, and because nobody can speak about me and my journey better than me. And so having that opportunity on the Hill, it made a major impact. It brought me joy because not only was I'm just talking on the Hill, you guys gave me opportunity to even just share far beyond just on Capitol Hill. And so I'm really thankful for that because it allowed me to build up my resources, but build up what I want to share, what I wanted to say, who I wanted to make this message to really go out. And the second thing is, what is my message? Is it about, do dialysis, be compliant, making sure you talk to your care team, understanding, what's going on in the center, or are you talking about change? And so that's how I realized for me, I'm about change, a change bringer change. And so I wanted to learn as much information as I can. I wanted to be right at the table to make change. I mean, I was so serious. Let me talk to those who make this change. Legislation policies is being done, but they're not talking to the people it's impacting. And instead of being helpful, it's being more of a negative. And so that was the area that I had to decide to do. And so for anybody else who's maybe considering, your journey or considering giving back, I would say first think about where you want to go. Think about what you really do. How much of an impact that you want to make? Do you only just want to do and be a mouthpiece within your community, or do you want to go higher in legislation, or do you want to just do personal screenings like myself? That's what's going to help you to do that. And if you join organizations like AKF, the question is, what impact do you want to make inside of those organizations? How far you want to contribute to helping this large conglomerate like an AKF, to get out. And the first thing I'm going to say is another reason why I'm actively engaged is that at the time when I had to retire, And only type of insurance that I had the time before Medicare kick in was the Cobra. Your policies are helping us pay for our insurance plan helped me for at least the very first, I think, close to 12 months. It was a long time. You guys paid my Cobra insurance. You helped me, and that was that 20% I didn't have to think about or worry because that could be very overwhelming, and I didn't know where this money was gonna come from. So when I applied for the assistance, you gave me the assistance, you helped me out, and I was like, as you contribute, as you donate into organizations that helps you, you're gonna reap the harvest of how they help you. And that's what happened to me. And so I know that AKF was viable. I know that he was an excellent organization. You helped pay for my insurance. You even helped me get, discounts on some of the medications that I couldn't afford. So, that's another thing that I would tell any individuals. It's like if you know you got this organization or whomever is helping you, then pour back, give back. Be willing enough to be that mouthpiece. And then the third thing will be uh, as they going on this kidney journey. You can't help no one else until you help yourself. So as you are building up your life and developing who you're going to be, you're going to find yourself wanting to be a squawker. You're going to find yourself wanting to be just tell somebody what you going through because as you talk and you share your story, you're going to find out you are not on this journey by yourself. You're going to find out there's other people who could connect because I felt that I was doing this all by myself. But then when I started connecting with other advocates and other peoples and they was telling me what was happening to them, and I was like, dang, that was happening to me. And so it was just such a release, and I gained so much more value, valuable information and value in helping me to live this journey. So that's what I would just share. Because once you start at home, start with you, then you can see how much of a staying connected of an impact it's going to help with your overall lifespan. Because my third motto, I got three mottos, is my will to live is stronger than this disease. And how I help myself to build up my will is doing things like this. I get joy when I'm able to come and just share and just talk like this, conversation as to what has happened and what's going on. Because that lets me know that somebody's hearing me and change only gonna come when the change comes, right?
Della, thank you for being a professional squawker for our community. We're very honored that we have you in doing that. I feel like I need to have a call with you every Monday morning because I'm leaving this very inspired and motivated. Um, so we really appreciate your time today. Anything that you wanted to plug, any of your own sites or that before we leave?
Yeah, I'm just gonna just say this. You know, if you've been doing this for what, 10 plus years, if you have been on this journey and you definitely even in advocacy, because I know there was a period where so much was going on that I had to take a step back. I had to take a step back from advocacy and everything because my body was forcing me to take a step back. And even after, like you heard me say, I had that grief period span of losing the first kidney transplant after waiting 10 years for it. Um, it made me start thinking about, okay, I mean, I'm really pouring out a lot to others, helping them to make sure that they get what they need. But one of the things that I had sort of kind of like to say for myself, I felt that was not really putting myself a little bit first before I could pour out to others. And so I'm going to just share with you, don't get tired or burned out of doing something that you love passionately. If advocacy is what you do, which it is part of my DNA, that's great. But you need to take a moment to reflect for yourself and take care of yourself. So don't be afraid to speak up and just say, hey, you know what? I maybe need to take a couple months away or do something because you need to have that reflection time. You need to have that time where you're building yourself up and everything is going to be great. That's number one. But the last piece I'm going to say is this: you are not alone. You are not alone. Even if you don't do advocacy, speak up because if something is that you've heard is bringing about change, is helping you, the only way you're going to be able to get what you need is you got to talk. Share it with someone. Share it with another patient. Share it with your family members. Get on some of these support calls. It's important because information that's not only coming from the health professional side, but also coming from other patients like myself, it's going to help you to be able to live that new normal, and it's going to help you to be able to build the life that you need, because everything is new now. It's not the same. You can't operate old wineskin. So I'm just telling you, do something new, learn something new, and make a change. Live your life victorious and empowered.
Thank you so much, Della. Well, if you'd like to learn more about lupus and lupus nephritis, you can get that via our Looped In on Lupus campaign. We'll drop that in the show notes and link, as well as our charitable assistance programs that Della mentioned and our kidney health coach program. Della, thanks again. And we look forward to having our listeners back at the next episode of the Kidney Collective. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
To find out more about the topics we discussed in this episode, or to access resources to learn more about kidney disease, go to the episode show notes on your podcast listening platform or go to kidneyfund.org/podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe or follow the Kidney Collective wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave us a like or review to help us reach more members of the kidney community.
You can also follow AKF on all major social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, X, or whatever comes next. Join us next time. Remember that even in the toughest moments, there's hope ahead, and the Kidney Collective and AKF are here for you now.